The Mandalorian shadows of the Creed, the Razor Crest II, drifted silently through the black vastness of hyperspace. The war was behind them, at least for now. Din Djarin sat in the pilot's seat, helmet on once more, unmoving. Grogu slept peacefully in his hovering cradle, still recovering from the strain of the Force. They had both seen too much, done too much now. Finally, they were going to rest. Their destination was a lush moon on the edge of the outer Mandalore system, home to an ancient pilgrimage site used by the old clans. Din knew he needed absolution not for the blood spilled, but for the moment he removed his helmet. For Grogu, the words of the Creed still echoed in his mind. This is the way. But those words no longer felt as simple as they once had. On the moon's surface, ancient ruins rose through fern-covered stone and moss-draped cliffs. Other Mandalorians arrived from across the stars, marked by the sigils of scattered clans. Some nodded in silent recognition. His name was known, his deeds legendary. The remembrance began with ritual combat, as tradition demanded. These were not battles of hatred, but dances of honor, steel against steel in the name of the ancestors. By nightfall, fires burned deep in the forest, and the songs of helmeted warriors echoed into the twin moons above. Din sat among them, Grogu in his lap, and for a moment, just a moment, it felt like peace. The clanging of armor, the rising chant reminded him who he was, and what it meant to be Mandalorian. Grogu stared into the fire, placing a tiny hand on Din's arm. This too was the way. Then came the signal, broken, frantic, a distress call from another Mandalorian world, a hidden refuge used by exiles and clanless survivors. The transmission was garbled, desperate. Under attack, we need help. Heavy losses. Din rose without a word. The time for rest was over. The warriors looked to one another, silent and sure. Armor snapped into place, helmets sealed with purpose. There was no debate. Mandalorians did not abandon their own. Din glanced at Grogu, now wide awake, as if he had sensed it coming. Let's go, the Mandalorian said, and with that, the galaxy tilted back toward war. His stars stretched into lines as the Razor Crest II dropped into hyperspace. The warriors had answered the call without hesitation. Nora demanded it. Din sat quietly in the cockpit, Grogu by his side, and behind them, the other Mandalorians prepped in silence. Their destination, Kiro's Tal, a forgotten Mandalorian colony now under siege. No one knew what they would find, only that their kin had cried, "O Tand!" The Creed demanded an answer. Grogu stared ahead, unmoving, his eyes deep in concentration. There was something wrong, not just danger or death. He had felt those before. This was older, quieter, like something hiding beneath the surface of thought, waiting to be remembered. Din glanced over. You feel it too. When they emerged into real space, Kiro's Tal greeted them with silence. A shattered moon hung in the sky above the planet, as if clawed by something immense. The colony itself was in ruin, ash, twisted metal, the remains of a once thriving outpost. No enemy ships, no signs of life. Just echoes, drifting like ghosts across the comms. Din guided the Razor Crest down into the smoke. The landing zone was charred black, a crater where a stronghold once stood. Mandalorian banners were torn and burnt. A few of the warriors disembarked ahead, sweeping the area with scanners, while Din and Grogu followed in silence. The child clutched at Din's armor, his ears low. It's quiet, one of the warriors muttered. Too quiet. But this time it was true. They found the first body near the outer wall, still in armor, hands fused to his rifle. He had died standing. Inside the walls they uncovered more. Warriors turned to ash, as if burned from within. There were no blaster marks, no bombs, no visible wounds. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't been conventional. Din crouched beside one of the fallen. This wasn't just an attack, this was a message. Deep within the ruins, they discovered the signal source, a bunker half collapsed. Inside, a lone Mandalorian clung to life, his armor cracked and bloodied. He looked up as Din approached, helmet off, eyes wild. They knew everything, our defenses, our codes, our names. Din leaned closer. Who? The man coughed, blood on his lips. One of us. The words hung in the air like a blade. Din exchanged glances with the other, suspicion already brewing. Betrayal among Mandalorians was rare, but not unheard of, especially now, with their people scattered, desperate. Grogu stepped forward, staring at the wounded man. Then he froze. His eyes rolled back, and the Force surged around him like a wave. A vision struck him, fire sweeping across a hall of Beskar, masked warriors falling, and above them all a presence, pale and endless, whispering through time. He saw a symbol, a spiral carved into bone. A voice spoke with no sound. He tore the veil. Now we return, Grogu gasped, and fell backward. Din caught him. The others gathered, watching silently as Grogu came to. He looked up at Din, face pale. Something's coming. Din didn't need more. He felt it in the air, like a storm building behind the sky. This wasn't over, not even close. He turned to the others. We need to regroup, and we need answers. Back aboard the ship, tensions were rising. A younger warrior, Velteric, confronted Din. How do we know you didn't bring this on us? He growled. You broke the creed, removed your helmet, stood beside a Jedi. The others murmured, uncertain. Din didn't flinch. I stood beside my son, he said simply. Val sneered, but said nothing more. That night, the warriors camped in silence beneath Kiro's Tal's shattered sky. Fires burned low, and Grogu rested in Din's arms. Din sat apart from the others, lost in thought. He remembered the scream when the Rot King died, the way the air bent around them. Maybe that death hadn't been the end. Maybe it was only a door opening. Grogu stirred. He's listening, he whispered. At first, Din thought Grogu was dreaming. But then he heard it too faint, distant. A whisper, not in words but sensation. Cold, hungry, watching. The others felt it. 2 helmets turned toward the sky as one. We need to leave, Din said. But before they could move, the shadows shifted. Something emerged from the tree line, tall, cloaked face hidden. It moved without sound, and yet every warrior felt it approach. Val stepped forward, blaster drawn. Identify yourself. The figure stopped, raised a pale hand, and the ground cracked open. Fire poured from the soil, and the forest ignited. The Mandalorians scattered, opening fire, but their shots bent in midair, redirected by invisible force. The figure remained untouched. Grogu raised a hand, but the shadow turned toward him and smiled. Din charged, igniting his flamethrower, but even fire wouldn't touch it. Get Grogu to the ship, he shouted. The warriors managed to force a retreat, but the battle left scars in the earth, and in them Grogu collapsed from the strain. Din carried him back aboard the ship, armor scorched. The pale figure watched from the burning forest, vanishing as the ramp sealed shut. That wasn't Sith, one warrior said. Din agreed. It was something worse. Once in orbit, they patched into old Jedi records, searching the archives for anything matching what they'd seen. A term surfaced ancient. Half erased the pale voice. An entity predating the Sith, whispered about in Jedi prophecy and erased from official doctrine. A creature that fed not on death, but on belief. And now, it had awoken. Kiro's Tal shrank behind them as the Razor Crest soared into orbit, its hull still warm from the fires below. Inside, silence settled heavily. Grogu slept fitfully, his small brow furrowed with dreams too big for his years. Din Djarin stood at the viewport, arms crossed, watching stars blur past. They had escaped, but not without scars. Behind him the others sat in grim silence. No one spoke of the thing in the forest. Not yet. There was too much they didn't understand. The name from the archives, the pale voice lingered in Din's mind like smoke, an entity that fed on belief. A wound in the Force. If that was true, something far worse than war had come for them. They jumped again. Coordinates locked for Concordia Prima fortified moon, one of the last Mandalorian outposts still standing. They needed answers, and allies. Concordia rose beneath them like a promise, gray, harsh, but whole. Its orbit bristled with defensive stations, and a squadron of Fang fighters flanked them through re-entry. No questions asked. The sigil on Din's shoulder spoke for him. Inside the stronghold, old stone met new steel. Warriors trained in the courtyards, hammers rang from the forges. It felt alive. But even here, unease followed them. Whispers, glances, the shadow of the creed's schism still lingered. Din had once been called apostate. Now many called him legend. Neither sat easy on his shoulders. They were granted audience with Tari Vox, elder of Clan Vishla, a warrior long thought dead, now risen to guide what remained. He was old, scarred, his voice gravel and fire. You've seen it, Vox said, eyes fixed on Grogu, the one beneath the veil. Din nodded. We need to know what it is, and how to stop it. Vox leaned forward. You don't stop it, you survive it. If you can. He told them of hollow songs, dreams turned against their dreamers, stories of warriors who heard their ancestors only to find their bones cracked open from within. Legends the Jedi buried and Mandalorians dismissed. Until now. It comes when the creed is weakest, Vox said. When faith fractures. It feeds on doubt, on division. Valteric shifted uncomfortably. So what? Because some took off their helmets, we summoned a god? No, Grogu said quietly, voice steady. Because you forgot why you wore them. That silenced the room. Vox stood and moved to an old display etched with clan lineages and myths. He pointed to a symbol near the edge, a spiral carved into a broken helm. We called it Dokibar, he said. The god that watches. It doesn't come to kill us but to become us, to wear our names, our stories. If we let it. Din looked to Grogu. The boy's eyes were distant, locked on the spiral. It's searching, he whispered, for a door. A hollow lit up beside the man, alert. A relay beacon, barely functioning, had activated from a derelict Jedi enclave on Zephyrin IX, a ruin known to be empty, dead, but the signal bore Mandalorian encryption Bo-Katan crisis code. She's gone, one warrior said. We saw her fall on Sundari. No, Din said, his voice cold. We never found a body. Against the Council's advice, they set course for Zephyrin X. The planet was bleak ash plains and hollow spires. The ruins of the enclave stretched like bones across the stone. They entered as a storm rolled overhead, shadows flickering through the shattered halls. And then they heard it chanting. Low, familiar. A Mandalorian war hymn, twisted somehow. Din raised his rifle, spread out. The voice echoed, layered in itself, like something speaking through a dozen mouths. At its center, the symbol again, the spiral carved into the floor with lines of black glass, and in the center a figure knelt, armor scorched, helmet cracked, but unmistakable. Byo-Katan. Din rushed forward, but she didn't rise. Her hands were bound with strands of molten metal. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly. She spoke in a voice that was almost hers. "He listens through me," Grogu cried out as the force surged. The walls trembled. The floor buckled. From the shadows came other warriors in Mandalorian armor. Their sigils obscured their movements, wrong, twisted by something ancient. "They were once like us," Byo-Katan whispered. "Now they are his." Blasters ignited. Steel met steel. The warriors fought back to back, Din shielding Grogu, blaster in one hand, vibroblade in the other. One of the enemy fell, his helmet split open. There was no face beneath, only swirling darkness. They fought their way back to the ship, dragging Bo-Katan with them. The ground cracked again, and a voice not heard, but felt tore through them all. "You remember me now." A shape loomed in the distance. Not flesh, not metal. Something made of memory, of legend, of belief turned inside out. As they launched skyward, the enclave collapsed into itself, spiral burning into the ash. In the medbay, Byo-Katan convulsed, whispering through clenched teeth. He is building a creed of his own. Din looked to the stars ahead, no longer seeking rest, only resolve. "This is the way," he murmured. And this time, the words felt like a vow.